Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 15 of our Travel Talks podcast series. I'm joined today by Paul Crawley from Emburse, VP of Sales EMEA North.
Lovely to be here, Ian. Thank you.
Excellent. My name's Ian Currington. I'm Director of Account Management and your host for today, alongside Paul. We're going to be talking about future-proofing your travel and expense program. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate your time. There's the opportunity to provide some questions, ask some questions as we go along, and that's in the question section online for you. So, Paul, perhaps first of all, if you could just tell us a little bit about who Emburse are.
Yeah, of course. So Emburse are a supplier of end-to-end T&E software solutions that are typically hosted and managed in the cloud. We have around 20 million business travelers and finance professionals using our solutions all over the world. The solutions are available in over 100 languages and about 20,000 companies of all sizes, from very small to very large. Emburse was founded in 2015. And we've grown organically and inorganically as well. So some of the major acquisitions we have made, some of your listeners might be more familiar with. For example, Certify. Emburse Certify is one of our expense management solutions. Emburse Chrome River is a solution that we supply typically to large enterprise organizations, and we have a solution in Southern Europe called Emburse Captio. So, your listeners might be more familiar with those brands, but they all fall under the Emburse umbrella.
Yeah, I think lots of businesses, certainly from a grey doors perspective, and I know from a number of the people that are registered onto the call, use either Chrome River or Emburse, but other people use a whole wide range of different systems from other competitors. And obviously it's good today to obviously be able to talk about Emburse, but principally really what is obviously happening within the overall market from an expense perspective. I know that you guys, you put together quite a detailed sort of survey and some big white paper really around that future, and that's today what we just thought we'd take the opportunity to unpack. And hopefully everyone can take away some hints and tips and perhaps a couple of things in order to help your own T&E program as you go through. So the first sort of question, I guess, just to sort of start this off, Paul, is why, T&E, we talk about it a lot, we talk about travel and expense, why should we care about it? What's important? Why is it so important to actually try and bring both travel and expense together into one place? What's the benefit?
Yeah, so look, you're right in saying we've been talking about it, for a long time, and the market in many ways has been conditioned to think about T&E as a package. Travelers go out, spend money on behalf of the organization, and need to report back on that and provide receipts and what have you. Expense tools today have gotten really good at being able to capture and OCR those receipts, but also when there's to capture employees when they're spending their own money, but also employees when they're spending on company credit cards, which will be quite popular again. But that's pretty much the extent of it at the moment, is that most solutions that are out there will capture receipts, will require the user to enter a little bit of information, will capture the credit card feeds. And then, but what still remains is that process of filling out the expense report. Even if you're using expense software, there's still some manual intervention. So, why companies should care about more integration between T&E is what we believe is by integrating travel data into the mix. So capturing information like the airline that I use, the operator, the class of ticket, the date and the time. When we capture all of that travel data as well, some magic happens. Yep. Now we've got all of the information we need, essentially, to be able to build an expense report automatically for the user. So, our vision of where the market is heading, and this is ironic for an expense company to say this, is that we want to eliminate the expense report. Yep. And that travel data is the kind of missing link, I suppose, between us being able to do that. So when you get back from a business trip, let's be honest, no one likes filling out the expense report, but you have to do it because, So what we want to bring to business, travelers is to be able to eliminate that completely. So that's why it's important.
Yeah, and I think there's been over the years, there's been quite a bit of development in that area. I know we use Certify ourselves, as you can imagine, and certainly from my own experience when I'm traveling, is that bringing in my own credit card, my company credit card in, and obviously that whole meshing sort of piece, that sort of certainly in the last few years has made the process a lot quicker, which I think is probably where we're all trying to get to. But obviously what we're talking about today is what's the next, ultimately what is the next stage, and obviously we'll unpack that as we go through. So you've sort of been talking around sort of why join the two together, but what would be some of the key sort of themes that are sort of happening in that landscape? What are people talking about? Where are you putting your investment? You've obviously spoken about data. What does that all sort of look like? What's the consumer experience look like for the future?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great point, because one of the things that we discovered through this research that we just published is that it's becoming more and more common for business travelers to expect consumer-like experiences. So, we all book our holidays online these days. The travel agent has disappeared, from the high street. So a lot of the booking is online, and we're seeing that behavior translate into business travel as well. So, and I think what business travelers are looking for is they're looking for that consumer-like experience. Thing making travel easy to book.
Proactive, expecting what people are going to be doing.
Yeah, that's right, and guiding them. So the best tools will kind of guide them, in the right directions, and be mindful of, their hotel preferences or their preferred airline. I think that's the other theme as well. Is we're seeing a lot of desire for business travelers to have more autonomy, and finance teams want that as well. They want to empower business travelers and people within the organization to spend company money, effectively, and make intelligent choices without the need to go through lengthy approval processes. So there's some of the trends that we're seeing, and ultimately for the business traveler, what that means enabling them to focus on the trip, and the purpose of the trip, rather than the journey itself. So tools that can help navigate the booking process. One example, that a lot of business travelers face is, should I book now, or should I wait? Well, actually, there are tools out there that can automate that. Where you can book a hotel or an air flight now, and it can be reshopped for you, so that you can guarantee the best price. So there's some of the things that we're seeing.
And I think that's obviously the reshopping sort of side of things is something I know that we can work with you guys on, and it's something out there in the market with people can find to be quite helpful. And I think one of the things we're often talking about as I head up the account management team is that continual reminder that actually travel is our world, and we get very excited by travel because that's what we do all day long. But actually, travel is just the means to an end of somebody getting from one place to another for a meeting, or to do a particular piece of work, or some consultancy, or to create something. And actually, we want to make that whole piece of work as simple as possible, whether it is as part of that travel part, and actually bringing the travel and expense together. So we talk about total trip cost, don't we?
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of one of those pieces of actually bringing both Certify or Chrome River together with ourselves, and the data that we've got through Portal and through our Your Data product actually allows us to be able to get to that holy grail of total trip cost, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it extends beyond that as well. There are companies who are looking into T&E, incur or spend money in other different ways as well. So there's invoice spend. One of the things that we witnessed, post-COVID was we all packed our laptops up and went home, right? Yep. So it became more difficult for lots of organizations to continue to enable their budget holders to spend freely. Yep. So we saw a spike in demand for online invoice approval, because obviously paper was much more difficult to move around. So I think that's one of the other trends that is now becoming more mainstream, in as much as, when you look at spend of an overall organization, T&E is one category of spend. Yep. And what we're seeing is that more and more organizations want to look holistically at all of their spend and break down some of those silos, that exist of, invoice spend being in one bucket and T&E being in one, because you might actually find that certain merchants, you're spending, more money with, but the data is all in different silos. So, if marketing book a conference with the Marriott hotel chain, it's very difficult when that data is in one silo to be able to reconcile that with how many rooms you're spending in a Marriott. So,
absolutely.
So that's really, so one of the drivers there, I think, is about visibility. I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, we find that a lot with customers that sort of perhaps, as you said, marketing or perhaps an event team or a particular piece of work that perhaps doesn't quite fit in the traditional travel sort of sphere, but obviously is a supplier or is a relationship which is actually relevant to actually have that total data together, and as well as what we term as sort of off program or rogue spend or the people going off and doing their own thing, and actually again that helps that sort of compliance of that program to obviously come together by having an expense tool. So the travel manager or the person responsible for T&E is able to get that visibility and to understand who's doing what and actually how do we get the most of that. And I think most businesses we would see have sort of principal business goals, which are along the lines of control, visibility. Ultimately they want to have the visibility, and with the visibility brings an element of control. Yeah. And again, from sort of the research that you've done, how well does that sort of align the work that you've been doing align to those kind of goals?
Oh, very much so. I mean, when you think about it, they conflict. So, I mean, we're talking about autonomy and freedom of choice and flexibility on the one hand for the business traveler, but who's paying for that business travel? The finance team. When someone's out there doing a trip, there's two things that spring to mind. One is, where are my people, and what are they doing with our money?
Absolutely.
So they really conflict, because the finance team want compliance and control over the spend, and the travelers want autonomy. So so there are, but again, there are tools that are moving forward that can solve for that. And one good example has been around for a while, but its usage is becoming even more and more mainstream, are company credit cards. Now, historically, they've been plastic credit cards, but what we're now seeing is much bigger uptake of virtual credit cards. So what's different about a virtual credit card is, there's not the same onerous process of issuing virtual credit cards. They can be issued almost instantly. The other thing about virtual cards is they tend to be a lot smarter. So, for example, you can time phase a virtual card to be only allow travelers spend money within a certain time phrase, their trip. You can also lock down merchant types. So, obviously you don't want to, unlike a P card where you can spend anywhere, with a virtual card, you can say, well, let's open it up to hotels or ground transportation. And the card is smart enough to block any spending outside.
So it stops people from enjoying themselves and then repenting at leisure, enjoying the moment and then repenting when it comes through to the finance team.
Yeah, that's right. Or that difficult conversation with the boss.
Absolutely.
Is why was the minibar bill?
Absolutely. Or why have you spent so much money on a particular thing? And I think that's the way that the industry is moving, and sort of really why we wanted to have this conversation together, to sort of open up some of those ways of actually, we've got travel programs through ourselves which can be well controlled and can have lots of elements of making people go in particular direction, although allowing people to have that flexibility to do the things they want to do. But actually, once you get off the travel thing, and once people get into destination, and once they get off the plane or off the train or out of the hotel, then actually, how do you enable people to have the products and the tools and the ability to be able to spend the money that is relevant to the company? But how can you have that level of control that perhaps, as you were saying, the old traditional plastic card didn't really have? And I think, again, we're working with people like yourselves, and actually having that integrated program allows us to start to think about those kind of bits and pieces.
Yeah, and all of these, you think about all of these tools are just things that help guide the business traveler towards a smoother trip. I mean, the other thing that we can solve for is I know there are lots of travel companion apps out there, where they can help recommend hotels or ground transportation or popular restaurants, things like that. These tools exist in the marketplace. They're in the hands of the business traveler, again, to help them focus on the purpose of the trip, not the journey itself.
Absolutely. So based on some of the research, what kind of factors should T&E managers use? Sort of how do they have determine the right choice of supplier? Who should they work with? What are the kind of things they should be looking for within with an expense system? I mean, obviously you're going to tell me all the things that are great about your business. Of course you are. But obviously, for everybody, what should they be looking for, and what should people be thinking about for the future?
Well, yeah. I mean, firstly, the first bit of advice I would say is solve for today. Is there are some really quick wins that can be had, by implementing end-to-end T&E. And those can be quite frictionless and implemented quite quickly. So if you're considering a T&E project, unlike some other finance projects, it's a relatively simple thing to go and place on top of your existing systems. Integration is key. Yep. So you need your expense application to be integrated with other key applications. We're talking about travel applications, of course. We're talking about ERP. Yep. At the back end. We're talking about credit card feeds. These are all sources of data that are really important to help automate as much of the process as you can.
But with lots of systems these days, it's about linkage, isn't it? And the ability now with technology to be able to link systems together. And when the systems can link together, that's when the magic happens, isn't it? Because everybody is singing to the same hyn sheet, I suppose, to use the frame.
Well, I think the data's a lot more accurate. It's less prone to human error. When everything's automated, but also it's more convenient, right? Yep. So I think that's obviously the first thing is solve for today. There are some quick wins to be had. I think the other key thing is as we're talking about here, this marketplace is moving quickly. Yep. I've been selling solutions like this for more than I'd care to say, more than 10 years. Yep. But right now I'm seeing that the velocity of change is like I've never seen it before. Yep. And there are lots of factors as to why the NDC content is one
for example. The airlines, the new distribution.
Absolutely. Yep. So again, the other piece of advice that I would give to companies, solve for today, but also when you're looking at your supplier, have a look at what their roadmap is for the future. How quickly are they embracing these new technology? Because if you don't factor that in, the risk is you're going to fall behind your competitors.
So I guess to sort of bring that to life, really, lots of people may have an expense system that have perhaps had running for a long time, but what you're saying is maybe it's time to actually just look at that, kick the tires, and it could be to say, what could we do more with that? How could we integrate that more with ourselves from a travel perspective? How could you integrate it more with a credit card perspective? And how could you integrate it with their own systems? And it may be an existing customer of yourselves, and therefore let's have a conversation, get in touch with your Grey Doors account manager, and we'll set up a joint call. Or it could be that you're working with another supplier and actually you want to have a conversation with ourselves jointly as to what the art of possible could look like.
Yeah, and I think this is what this podcast is about. It's about educating our mutual customers and your customers to get ahead of their competition. And I think there's so much that can be gained by embracing. I mean, I don't know what we were planning to talk about AI. Today.
I think that was on definitely whatever podcast we do, wherever you go, it's always about AI. There's always those questions. So let's rip that one off, shall we?
It's hard not to, isn't it? It's hard not to. But look, in all seriousness, the research that came through that we did, AI was up there, as one of the key things that you should be asking a current or a future supplier. What is their strategy with AI? But actually, AI itself is not the answer. The answer is, what are the use cases for AI? What actually does this mean?
What's the benefit?
To our business. So at Emburse, we do have a very talented data science organization who, we're already building our own large language models to help us understand, simple things like receipt data and invoice data, and extract, intelligently and make that unstructured data into structured data to help auto-populate the expense report. But there are so many other applications that we could explore. A simple one that we're probably all used to, consumption of AI is quite common now, are bots. So with an expense program you have policies, travel and expense policies. So bots can help travelers interrogate those policies, and do it in a contextual way and in a quick, rather than having, it's much more attractive than having to read a 20-page Word document. And
it certainly is. Yeah, I just want to get, and I think a lot of this and a lot of what you've been talking about, we've collectively been talking about, is ease of access. Everything that we work today, it needs to have a great user experience, so that whether it's booking travel, whether it's having an expense, how can I make that as simple as possible? How can I have the least number of touches possible? And how can I, as you were just saying, how can I get to that one piece of information as quickly as possible? Because people don't have time to read masses and masses, and we see travel policies and expense policies that are pages and pages long and could be a 30-page document. And actually, I've seen some recently that have been brilliant, which have actually just been based on 4 PowerPoint slides, and actually really good way of getting to the bottom of the key point. But you can also use AI to be able to do natural language search sort of questions.
Yeah, and some of the other uses of AI, again, when you're building these large language models, prior to, it will allow you to do clever things like benchmarking. Yeah. So as a 5,000 employee global organization, how does my average airfare compare to another 5,000? So and again, if you're using analytics, we could use AI to query the analytics tool to say, give me 3 quick wins where I can reduce my expense. Which merchants, which categories, or what have you. That information can come much more freely, with some of those large language models. But fundamentally, I think what we're talking about, the 2 main trends that we're talking about is convenience for the traveller, the frictionless travel experience, and the holy grail of merging that with the compliance needed by the organisation to keep that traveller spend and general spend under control.
Excellent. So my very final question is, there may be somebody on the call, or there may be a few people on the call that sort of feel a little bit shy in the fact that they're still that company, and we still find them that are still doing their expenses with an Excel spreadsheet and with a stapler, and that genuinely that still exists. So if that is you sort of quietly, maybe this question is for you. So if you're still at that stage and you've looked at this and you kind of go, actually, there's an amazing future that we can get to. There's some amazing things going on and we can move this forward. But actually, I'm nowhere near that. I'm just still at the starting point. So what would be the best thing I know what the answer is going to be, but what would be the best thing to do? What would be the next step? Why should they move away from an Excel spreadsheet?
Well, all the things we've just spoken about. I mean, my advice to them is speak to us. It's not a bigger leap as some people might perceive it to be. And listen, I'm not gonna lie and try and pretend that every company we speak to is already on it. They're not, and that's great because it's a fantastic opportunity for us. But what I really get a lot of pleasure about in my role is helping companies solve for those problems. It's nonsense when you think about it, seeing people photocopying receipts. and who uses a stapler these days to staple the receipts to is there is a better way.
Absolutely.
I'd love, like I said, no obligation, just speak to us. There are lots of reference customers who
Absolutely,
are doing this successfully.
And I think this is the point, is that sometimes every journey starts with a first step, and it could be that your first step on the T&E journey could be that very start of that journey and reach out and speak to us, or it could be that you're a lot further down the road, you're a lot more mature, and that you still want to develop. And I think one of the things that's key for our business and why we work with Emburse and why we work so closely with Emburse is the desire to continue to keep improving, the desire to keep making things better, the desire to keep continuing to listen to customers. And that's very much what these sort of travel talks are all about, why we do them, in order to give some ideas to people. But we do encourage you to go away and to look within your own business as to what could be improved, how could we take some of the learnings from what we've talked about and actually bring in and speak to your account manager. And obviously we can also put you in touch with Emburse. We will, from today, be providing the opportunity to access the research that we spoke about on the call, so we will be sharing that with you. And we'll also give you the opportunity to look at various other resources and pieces of information which Grey Doors have put together on this important topic. So we have run out of time for today for Travel Talks. Unfortunately, we haven't got to everybody's questions. Great to see lots of questions in the chat, and we will come back to those. And I know that we'll use those for information which we will provide to you following this. We'll make sure that the Emburse research and information which we referred to is made available to you and shared with you, along with lots of other resources. So. Our next Travel Talks is episode number 16, which is all around diversity and inclusion in travel, which is a very important and highly emotive topic which lots of our clients are talking about and investing into, and we've got a great guest for that, and ultimately demonstrates the range of different topics that we have within our Travel Talks program. So thank you, Paul, for today, which is much appreciated. Thank you to all of our listeners who have joined us and the people that have joined us on the webinar today. If you do have any questions, then please do reach out to your account manager, and we'd love to obviously get you in touch with Emburse. But thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.